Hello minions, and welcome to this, another Blood on the Clocktower video with me, Clocktower Tom. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to storytell the outsider characters that you can find in the base 3 game Trouble Brewing, as well as looking at the top 4 Townsfolk roles. The game I've got set up here includes an imp and a poisoner, as well as a baron. Adding the baron in allows us to have 4 outsiders in a 12-player game. This would usually have 2 outsiders, but the Baron adds 2 extras in at setup. As a reminder, you can't put the drunk token in when you're playing online, and you shouldn't put the token in the bag if you're playing in person. Instead, as the drunk thinks that they're a Townsfolk character, you should put an extra Townsfolk into the bag. Some storytellers like to decide beforehand which character is going to be the drunk. Some prefer to wait to see where the tokens land in order to make that decision. Let's hand these tokens out and see where they land. Let's look at how to storytell the 4 outsiders of Trouble Brewing. We'll start with the Saint. The Saint's ability reads, if you die by execution, your team loses. From a storyteller point of view, that's quite easy. If the Saint dies by execution, the good team loses. One slight wrinkle to this is if the Saint is poisoned by the poisoner. The Saint therefore has no functioning ability, and if the Saint does die by execution, the game will continue. The Butler ability reads, each night choose a player, not yourself. Tomorrow you may only vote if they are voting too. In order to run this as a storyteller, you must wake the Butler in the night order every night and ask them to choose their master. There's a reminder token, which you can place in the grimoire, that reminds you who the Butler's selected. That will mean tomorrow, the Butler in seat 7 can only vote if the Virgin in seat 8 also votes. This is one of the roles that's difficult for the storyteller to keep track of. It is very much left up to the player to play by the spirit of the rules properly. If the Butler in seat 7 votes, but the Virgin in seat 8 doesn't, you can't just not count that vote because it would hard confirm the Butler to be the Butler. It is the responsibility of the player to know who they picked and to vote if and only if their master is voting. The general understanding of the rule is that if the Butler's master has their hand up during the vote and looks like they intend to vote, the Butler can also vote. However, if the master puts their hand down at the last minute, then the Butler shouldn't be penalised for that. Once you've handed your tokens out, you can decide who the drunk character is going to be. In order to indicate this, you could change the player's token from their original token to the drunk. However, this might mean that you forget to wake the character in the correct place in the night order. So the easiest thing to do is use the is the drunk reminder token. That way, if the character wakes in the night, you'll still remember to wake them up in the correct part of the night order. Remember that when choosing a drunk, if they're an ability-based character, then they won't have that ability. However, if they're an information-based character, they will receive information that you feed to the character. This can either be truthful information or false. It's the storyteller's decision. Having a drunk information gatherer is an incredibly powerful tool as a storyteller, which allows you to be able to craft a good game. Quickly running down the character sheet on the right hand side, the washerwoman, librarian, investigator and chef all start the game knowing information. If they're the drunk, that information is up to you as a storyteller. Try not to give anything too outlandish to make the player think that they're the drunk straight away. The empath, fortune teller and undertaker will all get ongoing information, and again that will be up to you to decide what information to give. For example, in this game, if seat 1 the empath is the drunk, I could show them a 0, indicating that they're sat between 2 good players. However, they are obviously sat next to one evil, the Baron. This is often quite a useful tool if the empath is sat between 2 evil players. The monk will still be woken in the night to ask to protect somebody, but that protection will never be effective. The Ravenkeeper, if killed at night, will gain information, but again, it's information that you choose to give. The Virgin will not have an ability, therefore will not trigger an execution if nominated by a townsfolk. The Slayer will not have a shot, so even if, in this case, seat 2 Slayer is drunk, they shoot seat 9 the Imp, nothing will happen and the game will continue. A drunk soldier can be killed at night by the demon, and the drunk mayor does not have the alternate win condition and will not potentially bounce a kill off onto somebody else. Remember that the outsiders cannot be the drunk. One thing to also note is that Seat 2 Slayer is the drunk, it means they're an outsider. If they nominate Seat 8 the Virgin, they are not a townsfolk and therefore they're not executed immediately. The final outsider on Trouble Brewing is the Recluse. You might register as evil and as a minion or demon even if dead. The Recluse is another powerful tool in the storyteller's arsenal. If a Recluse is executed, you might show the Undertaker, a minion, or a demon. If the Recluse is a living neighbour of the empath, you might show the empath a 1. A fortune teller might get a yes on the Recluse. Do bear in mind when running a game with a Recluse that the Recluse is a good character and that their ability does say you might register as evil, as a minion, or a demon. It's one of those times where the storyteller makes the decisions based on the game that's in front of you. Let's have a look at a different setup. We're now going to look at the top 4 characters from the Townsfolk section. The washerwoman, the librarian, investigator and chef are collectively known as top 4, and they are roles that start knowing information at the beginning of the game but don't gain any further information ongoing. We'll start with the chef. You start knowing how many pairs of evil players there are. Looking at this grim, a pair is defined as 2 evil players sat next to each other. So we have the imp sat next to the spy as one pair, and the spy sat next to the poisoner as another. In this case, we could give the chef a correct 2. There are 2 pairs sat next to each other. However, because of the spy's ability, you might register as good, we do have some options available to us here. We could register the spy as evil for being sat next to the imp and say there is 1 pair. We could then say the spy is good, registering next to the poisoner, and not turn that 1 into a 2. We could also give the chef a 0 and have the spy register as good for both of their neighbours. The investigator starts knowing that one of 2 players is a particular minion. In this case, as part of the setup phase of the game, you would decide where to put your reminder tokens. For this game, I would probably put the minion token on the poisoner and then choose another player to be the wrong token. In this case, it could be the soldier. I would then wake the investigator in the night order and say that either seat 9 or seat 1 is the poisoner. Depending on how balanced you think the game is, it is possible to use the Recluse's ability and register the Recluse as a minion to the investigator. In this case, you could say seat 3 or seat 1 is the Scarlet Woman, even though there isn't a Scarlet Woman in play. That would definitely be a decision up to you as a storyteller once you see where the tokens land. If it looks like evil might be in for a rough game, you might want to use the Recluse's ability. This would help the evil team out a little bit by throwing the good team off the scent. The librarian starts knowing that one of 2 players is a particular outsider, or in a case where there are no outsiders in the game, that there are 0 outsiders in play. This works exactly the same way as the investigator. In this case, we have seat 12, a drunk undertaker. There would be the outsider reminder token for the librarian, and I could put the wrong reminder token on seat 6, the fortune teller. Waking the librarian in the night order, I would say seat 12 and seat 6 are the drunk, and that would be their information. Just like we have a recluse throwing an investigator off the scent, we could also potentially use the spy, who might register as good, a townsfolk, or an outsider even if dead. We might say, rather than showing the undertaker who is the drunk, we might say to the librarian that seat 8 or seat 6 is the butler, for example. This then gives the spy the opportunity to bluff as an outsider, potentially hiding that there's a drunk in the game. Again, it comes down to storyteller choice at the beginning of the game. How do you think the tokens look in the Grim? Which side maybe needs a little bit more help? And finally, the Washerwoman. You start knowing that one of two players is a particular townsfolk. This is very powerful information for Tam, because if it's not drunk or poisoned, then it confirms one player's role. It works exactly the same way as the librarian and the investigator. You have to choose as a storyteller what to confirm. Looking around the Grim, a sober and healthy virgin will likely get confirmed by themselves, so probably not a good idea to show that. In this case, you could choose to confirm the soldier. Again, we use the reminder token for the Washerwoman to say townsfolk. When it comes to adding the wrong tokens on, you very much have a choice of where to put them. You don't always have to put them on good players. In this case, you could put the wrong Washerwoman token on the Imp. The Imp will start the game knowing 3 bluffs, none of which will be soldier, because there's a soldier in the game. This will allow the Washerwoman to confirm the soldier quite early on in the game, which will be a good thing for the good team. In the next video, we're going to carry on looking through the Townsfolk characters in Trouble Brewing, from the Empath all the way down to the Mayor, and how to storytell those. As always, thanks very much for watching. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Blood on the Clocktower videos. I am Clocktower Tom, and I will catch you all next time.